So, when you hear AK-47, what's the first thing that comes to mind? For most of us, it's a weapon. But for this explainer, we're going to look at it a totally different way. We're going to treat it as a brilliant and frankly troubling metallurgical puzzle, a problem literally made of steel.
And that puzzle leads to a huge question. How on earth did a rifle designed more than 75 years ago become maybe the most recognizable firearm on the entire planet? Well, the secret isn't what you'd think. The myth is that its success must be due to some secret Soviet blueprints or some kind of advanced space-age tech. But the reality? It's much, much simpler. The real key to the AK-47's unstoppable spread is hiding in plain sight. It's all about the metal it's made from. To really get it, you have to understand the philosophy behind it. And that philosophy is all about being common and simple. See, the goal was never to build the best rifle in the world. The goal was to build a rifle that was good enough for anyone, anywhere to make. This whole idea really rests on two main pillars. First, just use common, low-alloy steels, the kind of stuff you can find almost anywhere. And second, use a really simple, good enough heat treatment to make it strong. No fancy equipment needed. So let's start with the steel itself.
Just look at these characteristics. The steel in an AK isn't some exotic super metal. It's cheap, it's widely available, it's forgiving, so if you mess up a little during manufacturing, it's no big deal. And it's super easy to weld. It's a workhorse steel, plain and simple. The actual recipe is surprisingly basic. You start with carbon. That's the fundamental ingredient that turns iron into strong, hardenable steel. Then you just sprinkle in a few other common elements to get the exact properties you're looking for. Like, you add a little bit of chromium, not to make it shiny or anything, but to give it that famous resistance to rust and wear and tear. Then a little pinch of molybdenum. That's what helps the barrel keep its strength, even when it gets blazing hot from continuous firing. And finally, you add some manganese. That gives the steel its toughness, which is what keeps parts from cracking or shattering under stress. And that's pretty much it. Now think about that list for a second. Carbon, chromium, molybdenum, manganese. None of these are rare. None of them are controlled or hard to get. They are boring, everyday industrial materials. And that's the whole point. The recipe for AK-47 steel is basically open source by its very nature. And that brings us to the second principle. The hardening process is just as simple as the recipe. For an AK, all you really need are some small, basic furnaces and a simple dunk in oil or water. Now, compare that to a lot of Western rifles, which demand incredibly precise computer-controlled cycles and expensive specialty alloys. The AK's method is just rugged, cheap, and ridiculously easy to copy. Okay, so we've got this philosophy of using simple stuff. How does that actually play out in the physical design of the rifle? Well, it turns out the AK isn't just made of simple materials. It's designed from the ground up to be manufactured easily with those materials. And that brings us to the next two design pillars, which are absolute game changers. Number 3 is the famous stamped sheet metal receiver. That's the main body of the rifle. And number 4 is the secret sauce that makes it all work: forgiving, loose tolerances. The process of making the core of an AK-47 is just wild. You take a cheap sheet of steel, only about 1.5 millimeters thick, and then you just stamp it into its final shape using a huge press. It's a lot like making car parts or appliance bodies. It's a method built for massive output with a workforce that doesn't need years of specialized training. And what that means is the industrial base to produce the rifle's most important part already exists in almost every country on Earth. Seriously, if a nation can stamp out a car door, it has the basic technology it needs to start making AK-47 receivers. Now, here's an idea that might break your brain a little. In almost all engineering, you're chasing perfection, absolute precision. But with the AK-47, imperfection is actually a feature, not a bug. This right here is the power of loose tolerances. The parts are literally designed to have gaps between them. They're meant to rattle a bit. This means you don't need hyper-precise machines or perfectly consistent steel. You get way fewer rejected parts during production, and you don't need master machinists to do the work. The entire design is built to shrug off the realities of a low-tech factory. So, we've looked at the philosophy and the design. Now it's time to connect the dots and see what the real-world consequence of all this is. How this simple metallurgy created a global problem that basically replicates itself. Because of how incredibly accessible this design is, more than 50 countries, 50, officially manufacture their own versions of the AK-47. And that number doesn't even begin to count all the unauthorized clandestine workshops out there. The scale is just staggering.
So why did it spread so far, so fast? Well, it really just boils down to these 4 things. The barrier to start making them is incredibly low. Its simple metallurgy makes it ridiculously durable even with zero maintenance. The design is so forgiving it works even when it's made poorly. And, like we saw, the raw materials are common, unrestricted, and available everywhere.
All of this leads to a really powerful and kinda scary conclusion. The AK-47 isn't just a weapon. It's an idea. It's a manufacturing process. It's a self-replicating industrial ecosystem. And once a system like that gets out into the world, using materials that are everywhere, well, you can't really put that genie back in the bottle. And you can see how it all locks together right here. Look at the choice to use common steels. The metallurgical reason is that no special alloys are needed. The global impact? It's easy to source and manufacture literally anywhere. Every single design choice we've talked about, from the stamped receiver to the loose tolerances, follows that exact same playbook. A straight line from a simple choice to unstoppable global spread.
And all of this leaves us with one last, pretty sobering question. The story of the AK-47 isn't just about a rifle. It's about the incredible power of simple, robust, and accessible technology. And it forces us all to ask, when a technology is this easy to copy, can it ever truly be controlled?